Hey guys, it's Laura with Laura B Floss Tube. Thanks so much for joining me. Welcome or welcome back. So I thought I would give you a quick tutorial on a little post-it note holder that I made. I made these for the Quilt Guild here in Columbia, Missouri a couple months ago just to give out as little door prizes for doing a little challenge at our guild meeting. And the ladies really loved them. I gave out, I don't know, like 8 or so. Nothing too crazy, but I shared the picture of them in one of my previous floss tubes, and people were like, hey, I want to see the tutorial for that. So that's where we're at today. So as a reminder, this is what we're making. This is just a little post-it note holder. It has a little snap closure, and then it has a little post-it note in there, and this just slides in. So that little band just holds your post-it note pad in there. And these are great to throw in your purse or in your car or in a backpack if you have kiddos in school or college students. I love post-it notes. I'm kind of obsessed with them, to be quite honest. So this is just really a nice little gifty just to throw in a stocking or whatever. And Christmas is coming, so you got to get busy, right? Okay, so for supplies, this is my handwritten list, and I'll try to put this in the description box below as well. But basically, we're just going to need a little fabric and a little interfacing and a plastic snap. So here we are, our cutting table, and I just want to double check my supplies list and make sure I have everything that I need to get started. I'm going to need my post-it note pad, which I have one of those on my desk. We'll grab that in a little bit, no big deal there. We need 2 pieces of fabric that's at least 4.5 inches long and 9.5 inches, 4.5 inches wide and 9.5 inches long. So I have those. We're gonna need some interfacing. I like using the 911, I believe, a featherweight interfacing. So we have some of that. And then we need a plastic snap, and oh my gosh, I got this huge box of snaps on Amazon for a very low price. And what I really loved about this was that it came with the tool and everything that I need to put my plastic snaps on. So I have those, and then I also have my 9.5 inch square ruler because I just found that that was easier than like lining it up on the mat and using a big ruler or something like that to cut it. So 9.5 inch square ruler, even though we're cutting 9.5 by 4.5. So let me swing you on down here and we'll get cutting. Okay, so the one thing I didn't mention, which is kind of a little tip from me to you, is that this was so easy to pull out my fabrics this morning because I have a plastic shoebox tote that when I'm done with a project, I cut 5-inch strips and I just put them in here. And then when I have projects that need 5 inches or even a little less, 4.5 or even 2.5 inch, because you can get 2.5 out of there. I have some pre-cuts already in my stash of fabrics that I've used before. So obviously there's something that I like. All right, so we are going to cut our fabrics and cut our interfacing and then get sewing. All right, one thing I like to do is when I'm laying this out is I just go ahead and do my sandwich. So I have my fabrics and I'm gonna go ahead and flip those together, just like I'm gonna sew, right? And then I'm gonna go ahead and lay my interfacing right on top of that so I can cut all 3 of these layers at once. And I do have a little chunk cut out of my interfacing on this one end. So I'm just gonna move it to where it's not a problem. And then I need this to be 9.5 by 4.5. But again, I'm using my 9.5 inch square ruler and I'm using a 5-inch strip. So this is gonna be quick and easy cutting. Now, like I said, this is gonna be 4.5 inches wide. So I'm just going to trim that down. There's my scrap. Here are the pieces I need for the little cover. And then there's one more piece that I need, and that's for that little strip inside. And for that, all I need is a 2.5 by 4.5 inch piece. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut that out of this. Okay, so I'm cut. Okay, so I did forget one more cut that we need to do. On your sandwich, we're gonna fold this in half. And then we're just going to miter one of the edges. And that is going to cause this little flap not to be straight across right here, but to have that nice little angle. So we're going to take our ruler, and this is going to be on an outside corner. Don't put this on the inside corner. That's not what we're going for. And then if you have a line on your ruler, that would be a 45-degree angle. So we're just going to line that up about where we want it. And, you know, there's no like scientific measurement on this one, I would say. If you want more of that angle or more of that corner cut off, then obviously move it up a little bit. If you want less, then you can move it down. It's really up to you. I usually go about, I don't know, it's probably about an inch. Let's see. Let's turn this straight so we can see. Turn that straight on our mat and go here. Yeah, I would say I'm right at about an inch that I cut off. And this is on your unfinished pieces. So just know that that's going to be, you know, around an inch of a cut off your corner. Just cut that off. Now, the other thing I'm going to do with these pieces is I'm going to put a few pins just to hold those things in place, especially now that we have our corners cut, because we don't want to have layers shifting and then our stuff not line up. That would be no good. Now, I will be completely honest here and tell you that I am not a heavy pinner. I typically pin pretty sparingly. To be quite honest, on most of my quilt blocks and things that I do, I don't pin much at all. But since I do have these 3 layers here, and I want to make sure nothing shifts on these corners, I'm going to pin just a few places just to make sure that stuff stays in place. So the smaller piece that I cut, we're going to do a little ironing on it. And we're just going to fold this edge up about 1/4 of an inch and give that a good press. Then we're going to flip it around, do the same thing to the other side. Give it a press. Then we're going to fold this to basically the middle. And we're going to fold this to the middle. So we're going to overlap just a little bit. Hopefully you can see that. And we're going to press this. So we're going to have a little cased strip. And then we're just going to sew that with a zigzag. And that's going to be that little strap inside of your Post-it note holder that holds your Post-it note in place. So that's all I have right there. Okay, friends, I'm going to be honest and tell you this is a very quick and easy project. So I know you can totally do this. We're going to have 2 different things that we're going to do. We have a little zigzag stitch to sew on this, and then we're going to sew all the way around the edges, leaving about a 2 to 3 inch opening on one side so we can turn it. We're going to do a top stitch, and then we're going to be done. So let's do our zigzag first, and then we'll do the rest. Here we go. We're going to zigzag our little stitch. And typically I would be using a coordinating color thread or a complementary one, but I thought, well, you know, for the video, we'll just go ahead and stick with white, and that way you guys can actually see what's going on. Now you'll notice I didn't even backstitch there. I don't worry about that because these little ends are going to be caught in with the layer, the sandwich layer that we have. So we don't need to worry about that. One last thing that we need to pin in place, and we need to slip this between the 2 layers. Obviously, we could have done this before and not have to do this now, but you know, this is how we're rolling today. All right, so I'm going to move those pins out of the way. I'm going to take this pin out just for a minute. And then this little guy is going to be slipped in here at about 4 to 4 1/4 inches away from this tapered edge. And this is what's going to be holding your Post-it note holder in place. All right. So I want this, I know that this is going to be my outside and this is going to be my inside. So I want to make sure that the overlapped edge is towards this fabric. And I have it laying here on my ruler, and I'm just going to line it up at 4¼ inches and flip this back and pin it into place. And I'm just going to move this one up. And then I'll just move this one down here. All right, so 4 pins, look at that. Okay, now I am going to, and remember I told you we want to leave about a 2½ to 3 inch opening on one side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip this around and I'm going to start right about here, and you are going to want to back stitch. Now I use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can use a little bit more if you want. If you do use much more than a 1/4 inch, you may want to check the size of your Post-it note pad and increase the width of your fabric. But I'm using a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to leave that set on a 2 inch stitch length. And then I am going to back stitch here because this is going to be the beginning of our opening. I'm just going to go around the edges. All right, so we do want to clip these corners. So we're going to clip the corners. And then the flap corners as well. Just trim those up. And now we're going to flip it out. And I didn't leave much space here, you guys, because I forgot. Start closer to your end, because I forgot about my little notebook holder strap in the middle, and I wanted to make sure that I sewed over that. So let me get this turned out. But hey, look at that. I only had probably 1.5 inches, maybe 1.75 inches of an opening, and it's still going to work. It'll be fine. All right, now that it's kind of turned out, right? I'm going to use this 2-point turner. Now, if you don't have one of these, you can use a chopstick, a pencil. You can use the end of your scissors, but just be kind of careful with that, because I have been known to poke right out of the corner with scissors. And obviously you want to make sure they're closed, or else you could cut your fabric and then all of your work would be for nothing. And that's no good. So here we're just going to run this along the seam. I know a lot of people, and actually I did too, just used a chopstick before they had their 2-point turners in there. But I got this for applique, and it works really well for so many things. Okay, so now we are turned out. We're going to take this over to the iron and just give it a good press. Got a couple strings here. I'm going to snip. I'm going to take that over to the iron, give it a good press, come back to the machine, and do a little top stitching. Okay, so this is nice and pressed. And I would just point out the only place that you really want to be careful is right on this opening. And just make sure that you fold those edges under really nice, that they line up really good. And that's really the only place that you have to be super, careful or pay attention much with the pressing. So I'm just going to do a top stitch all the way around the outside just to give it a little more stability and to close that opening because I don't like hand stitching. All right, so, and for this, what I'm going to do, my machine, I have a 1/4 inch setting, and my foot, I'm going to run it right alongside the edge of my fabric, and then I can get about 1/8 of an inch top stitching, which is really nice. And if you're a newer sewer or just not confident in your sewing ability or whatever, obviously just use a thread that blends into your fabrics, and then you don't have to worry about, if you happen to run off or if it's not completely straight or whatever is the issue, or maybe you just don't want your top stitching to show. I really like top stitching, so I definitely want it to show. Okay, so go slow when you get to that little band because your machine may want to try to push that and flip it over, and that's no good. So just kind of go slow there. You may have to lift your foot like I just did and put it back down just to make sure you're over that little band so it doesn't get pushed when you're sewing along. Same thing, just like when you're sewing all the layers together, when you get to that corner, just make your turn. And here we are at the other side of the band, so I'm just going to lift my foot a little bit and put it back down, just to make sure that doesn't get pushed anywhere I don't want it to be. Do a little back stitch. And we are around there, and this is all of the sewing there is, you guys. I mean, this was like so super fast and easy. I do hope you try these out. And so the last thing we need to do is put our snap on there, and then we'll be done. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is just put our snap on the outside of this. And what I like to do is I want to put my Post-it note in here so I make sure that that snap doesn't make it too snug or too loose for a full pad of Post-it notes, because this is as much as it's ever going to have in it, right? So we'll just fold that around, and then we have an idea of where our snap should go. And so we'll poke our holes, put our snap in, and we'll be done with this project. Yay! So let me show you how that's done. Okay, so like I said, I put my Post-it note in here and I pushed this around. Now the other thing I want to do is kind of measure and figure out exactly where my center is. So I'm just going to use my cutting mat, and I know this is 4 inches wide now, so at 2 inches, which is right about there, is where my snap should go if I want it in the middle. So I'm just going to hold that, and I'm going to pull this up a little bit. And this all actually came with my snaps as well, which is so nice, right? And I go through all of the layers at once, so your snap lines up really well too. And then just kind of wiggle it around a little bit, and that way you have your whole set. All right, so a snap, when you put, if you've never used these before, let me explain. You need 4 pieces for a snap. You need the inset part and the little adapter part, and then these 2 little buttons that go on the outside. And these are like the male and the female part of the snap. So you'll have 4 pieces, and the little button part goes on the outside of the case because the snap part goes on the inside. Now we know where our hole is at because we marked it really well. So we're just going to push that through and put one of the inside parts there. And again, this tool came with the set as well. And then we're just going to squeeze. I probably over squeeze, honestly, but that's okay. Depending on how many layers you have, this is pretty lightweight, so not too big of a concern here. Now, this one, we want to make sure that we have it together correctly, right? So when you look at this finished product, you will see the snap is on, the button part is on the outside and the inside of this flap. So because when you want to put them together, you want to make sure they snap, right? So if you put the button here, then you would have nothing to snap into. So just pay attention to that. So the button is going to go on the inside, on the dark blue, and then this part is going to go on the outside. And then we'll squeeze that together. And that is that. So now we can go ahead and put our Post-it note back in there. Flip this up, bring this down, and we are snapped. There you go. That's all there is to it. Now, obviously, I used a pretty lightweight Pellon interfacing today, but you can use, a heavier weight if you want this to have more of a distinct shape to it. You probably could make this a little narrower than I did. My problem when I made it any narrower than 4.5, when I got it sewn together and down to 4 inches, this little band was a little too tight for the Post-it note holder to fit in there and slide in and out easily. So just be aware of that. The other thing that you want to, I would caution you about is, don't yank down on this Post-it note holder, because remember they are Post-it notes because they're supposed to break apart, right? So don't yank down on that too much because you'll just cause your Post-it note pad to come apart. So this is a great little quick gift. I know that this would be quick and easy to make for stocking stuffers, or maybe if you have a quilt show coming up, this would be a great little marketplace item. Yeah, for friends, for little door prizes. Anyway, great gift idea, quick and easy, and very practical. This is something that you can just throw in your purse and grab and go, and you have something to jot notes on. Or if you're like me, you can jot notes and stick them all over the place so you don't forget anything. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that you make some of these. Please share in the comments if you try this out, if you made some, if you love it, if you modify it for something else, because obviously this works for the 3-inch Post-it note pads, but you could use this for any size, and you could use it for notebooks and other things like that that have that top binding. So again, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you haven't. Share it out with your friends if you have others that would love to try to make these little Post-it note holders. And I will see you next time. Until then, happy stitching.